chapter clicked in to College Volleyball Weekly on Viral Volley Media. Now here's your host, Rob on mic.
Hey everyone, Rob Sparrow here with CVW Coaches Panel Contributor Theo Edwards in his office. Both of our seasons are done, so we kind of have a lot more time on our hands, but still some great volleyball to watch. But we're jumping on this week because some important news dropped just yesterday. And if you guys have been following, I actually had Joe McCurdy on this recent episode of College Volleyball Weekly Men's Top 20. And literally after we both got off of that recording, the news broke about Grand Canyon dropping the men's volleyball program. And that's why I wanted to bring Theo Edwards of CSUN on, because what all of you don't get to see is the camaraderie of most of the D1-2 coaches. They compete, but behind the scenes, they are the closest of friends and they do life together. They talk shop, but they have a great time. And, it's I know it's a lot different from the women's game. And that's what makes the men's game so unique. And it's not throwing shade at the women's game. It's just a different dynamic and culture. And with that, Theo has great experience and a history, not only with Grand Canyon being an assistant coach and now a head coach, and then also being close friends with Matt Worley and the rest of the crew at Grand Canyon, the interim coaching staff. I wanted to address everything here with Theo, and then we're going to have the other guys on a little bit later tonight. I'm going to put this on to one big piece later, or we'll see. I may just post individually. But Theo, I want to get your thoughts on that announcement yesterday. First, your initial thoughts, what you processed, and what the implications are of Grand Canyon University making the devastating decision to drop men's volleyball.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot to unpack, Rob. I think my initially coming across it, and I think I came across it similar to everybody else, right? Social media kind of took the jump, and in a lot of coaches group chats, we were instantly communicating and trying to really uncover the ins and outs of what is taking place. And I mean, you think about Grand Canyon and where it has gone, not just as a university, but from a men's volleyball perspective, from when Jeremy Price was coaching there to Matt Worley taking over, and the transition of them, to a very young and opportunistic university to one that has generated a lot of money and revenue and has excelled athletically, not just in men's volleyball, but in many, many sports. And we obviously watched last year, Grand Canyon, a Final Four participant, and one heck of a program is that Matt Worley had developed, and the names of Nick Slight and Cam Thorne, guys who've had massive impacts on men's volleyball and on our community, and have just done some great things, right? And so to see that name come across and hear that they were deciding to part ways, I initially, I got to say, it dropped there was a drop in my stomach, an overwhelming sadness. I think specifically for the student athletes that are there, but an overwhelming sadness for men's volleyball. This is not a new thing. And I could take you all the way back to CSUN in 1997 when our program was cut. And presidents and universities make these decisions all the time. And a lot of people worked incredibly hard to rebuild and get it back, which I'm incredibly grateful for, right? Grateful for it. It made me the person that I am today, and obviously allowed me to have the job that I have now. And here I am speaking about this game that I know and love. So my initial thoughts were with the student athletes and the current roster that's at Grand Canyon, but also the many that have come before it. And we've watched over the last couple of days the interviews that have come from Nick Slight and Cam Thorne and many of their athletes who have had lasting legacies there, and just talking about their experience and what this place meant to them and the impact that it's had on their life. And I think that there's a lot to uncover in terms of understanding why Grand Canyon made this decision. And I'm sure, Rob, we're going to dissect a lot of that. But I'm incredibly sad for these student athletes. I'm upset for these coaches. I'm upset for our community. This is a devastating blow to men's volleyball, and my heart goes out to everybody that's going to be impacted by this.
Yeah. Well, we know this last year they were competing. They picked it up at the end there, but the MPSF, one of the top conferences in the nation, they're coming off of what people don't realize. They were also in the final 8 at Fairfax, Virginia the year before, and that was Camden Gianni, Christian Jenke. I mean, Nick Slight was on that team as well. There
Yep.
was some solid talent there, and what Coach Matt Worley had done was nothing short of phenomenal success for the program. With all the responses we've been seeing, obviously there's shock. It is very powerful when Cam Thorne, who transferred to UCLA, is getting into the fight with his former teammates with keeping the program. He knows that there's something special there. There's a group of guys. Jackson Hurd was interviewed by Joe McCurdy and Slate's Media as well. And,
Yep.
there is a special thing. There is still so much great potential in that program. And to say that they're in the semifinals last year, I mean, that program is only going upward.
Well, and to your point, Rob, like that we've seen this in the past. We've seen universities make these decisions around Olympic sports in the past. We saw it with Pacific. We saw it with Stanford, who we are grateful that was able to be overturned. We have never seen it on a program that is this good. And I'm just going to be quite frank. Now, granted, Stanford has been great, and they've had some great years. At the point in which they decided to move in a different direction, they were not a Final Four team and a previous Final 8 team. This GCU team was inside the top 10 this season. They were a top 10 team in the country this year, coming off the back of 2 outstanding seasons. And if you want to talk about what sports are, we can talk all day long about what it does for the student athletes. But at the end of the day, we know a lot of people care about production. And does the team produce, and how talented are they, and what do they do for their community and for the university as a whole? And Matt Worley had built an absolutely incredible program. And the proof is in the pudding. The proof was in the pudding. And to see a team of that caliber get cut is absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
Absolutely shocking.
Well, as a coach and being in the game, not only as an athlete, but through the assistant and now the head coach days, there's another population that's being affected. I've been seeing messages from their recruits who are coming in, who have committed to play Grand Canyon, and their families, and and they're justifiably enraged, and they are being turned away. They're not being given any answers, and they found out, and this is confirmed through multiple reports. Everyone found out through social media. So what are your thoughts on how that all came about?
Yeah, so this to me is a topic that is probably the biggest one when it comes to this, and transparency and accountability, right? To me, the fact that this happens, and it does happen in sports, is not the shocker in totality, right? This isn't the biggest surprise. The biggest surprise is how a lot of these universities handle it. And I think I'm going to say a lot of things that are going to be really offensive about Grand Canyon as an institution. But I want to keep it in perspective, in the sense that the reason I feel this way is because of how much I know about how this is going to impact, like you said, Rob, the incoming recruits, the families, the alumni, the current players, and changing the course of the actions of what their life is going to be like. Not just their volleyball career, not just the next 3 or 4 years. You're going to change the life of many, many people. And when you have a situation unfold like this, the way that it did, because now I've heard a lot more, not just about, hey, a lot of people found out on social media, which the team did. But in addition to that, the way that they told the team, and the way that they handled supporting them and allowing the coaches to be a support system, was an absolute failure, and a disgrace to those student athletes and to them as human beings, right? Like if we're going to make the decision, and one of the things that you and I talked about before we started this, but like there's been programs in the past that have gotten cut and there's been transparency about it happening.
Yep.
Giving student athletes the ability to figure out what the next steps are, right? Giving them leeway, helping the coaches understand what's the timeline like? How much time do we have left? How do we prepare for this? And then when you get to that stage, you're already making this as a business decision. You have to support the student athletes and understand
Yep.
that the connection piece between the university and those student athletes is the coaches. That program had already been through a lot when Matt Worley had left and joined Kansas, but they didn't need to also be dragged through the mud without the coaches being able to be allowed in that meeting and having the ability to say, hey, listen, we understand how difficult this discussion is going to be and what it's going to feel like, but we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that you feel supported. And we're going to give you guys leeway and we're going to give you tools and allocate funding to help you get places that you want to go, because that's what being a Christian institution is all about. And it's incredibly, it makes me incredibly upset to hear how it was handled, because I know a lot of these kids who play on, a lot of these student athletes who play at Grand Canyon. I obviously know these coaches really, really well, and they deserve better. And that part was really, really devastating to come across.
Yeah. I had to pull up the mission statement of Grand Canyon as we've been chatting there.
I
And
think that's a great
the
idea.
last,
I think
the
that's a
last
great idea,
sentence,
Rob.
it says, Christian identity as a mission. Find your purpose at a Christian university. At Grand Canyon University, you're encouraged to find your purpose and shape your own perspective by embracing a distinctive Christian worldview. This means that we not only integrate faith in our curriculum, but also in our actions we take to positively impact the community.
Bingo. Bingo. And look, from a business perspective, once this decision has been made, I get it, right? This is very similar to a poor breakup in your life, right? Two people decide, hey, this isn't going to work anymore. There are ways to go about that discussion that's respectful, that sees people as human, and lets them have the decency of appreciation for what they've done. They've built
Yeah.
something really, really special there, and you essentially pulled the rug out from under it, and you did it without giving them any notice, without having them understand that it was coming. And now, when we're at the becking hour of time, you don't even give them the ability to be dealt with in a careful manner that has them feel supported and gives them the resources to help themselves through that process.
I mean, even just with this transition, this is going to be, these are life decisions and life impacting uh, impacts they're going to have on these kids' lives.
Yep.
Young men. And I mean, it's just terrible what they're going to have to try and do now. Some are, well, they've offered club. They said it's going to club, but who's going to want to stick around and play club ball? I mean, they can.
This is a top 10 team in the country. They're not sticking around to play club. This team is built for professional volleyball, and a lot of them are going to make a lot of money doing so. And it is almost insulting that Grand Canyon would assume anything different in a realm of what has been student athletes starting to get recognized for their talents. And in other sports, would we ever assume that you cut a sport that had a LeBron James on it and be like, hey, now you're going to come play a club sport? No, you would never disrespect them with that type of a statement. But to your point, Rob, there's a bigger picture part of this. And to me, it's the preservation of collegiate athletics, and it's the preservation of Olympic sports, and it's the preservation of men's volleyball. And to me, one of my biggest fears, and I think that a lot of coaches would echo this, is there's a lot of changes coming with the NCAA. And I think that for all of the people that are listening, and for sure the parents and the student athletes, a lot of people are going to be fixated on the roster cap, right? Everyone's going to be talking about 18, and everyone's going to be talking about the potentials of that, meaning more scholarship budget and all of those things that come with it. And I think that there's some good to be had there, and there's some great conversation to be talked about. There's also some fears that surround that, and I understand those too. There's a much bigger piece to this topic that I don't know that a lot of people fully understand. And when you talk about revenue sharing, which is what the big conversation is surrounding the court rulings and what they're trying to hash out, that is going to impact this whole 18. But the revenue sharing is essentially a way to share the revenue that the university makes with the student athletes and give them their recognition, because they are a big part of, especially for the major institutions, of the money that's being made. And so
Right.
the biggest fear that a lot of us have in understanding that is for the non-professional sports, right? The Olympic sports. So obviously we're not talking about basketball, we're not talking about football, baseball, and I would even include soccer in that conversation because we have the MLS and some pro circuit. But for the Olympic sports, there is a fear that we might not have the same value structure about college athletics that we used to, and that it has become so business oriented and a focal point of, yes, we want to see the universities be successful. We want to see student athletes get their due in terms of being rewarded for the things that they are creating, right? The things that they're helping build. But sports like men's volleyball, gymnastics, track and field are starting to catch the blunt edge. And it's been happening for a slow period of time over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. But this could be a jump start into seeing many programs go down this road.
Wow.
I'm not just talking about, I think for a lot of us, we think about the smaller schools, the D2s and the smaller D1s. We're not just in fear of those schools. We're in fear of the ones that generate revenue, and some of the major schools too. And that to me is the bigger fear, and the biggest piece of this conversation that I hope we all start to understand is that there's a lot of universities that just don't see collegiate athletics the way that we do in men's volleyball.
Yeah.
And they're wanting to move in a way, and this is just a step in that direction that is just terrifying for the future of our sport. And to watch a team that has been that successful and has brought that much great notoriety to Grand Canyon, them being willing to part ways is really, really scary on a big picture perspective.
Yeah. Well, there's a side of me that uses the terms like neglect and I mean, just utter like chaos in their decision making. But I mean, there's some other words that have been used, and obviously people are very hurt by this. And I feel like this is what's going to happen. They're going to try and ride out the public opinion that is in support of Save Grand Canyon men's volleyball. It's like, oh, let's count the amount of money that we saved on this, or what's the financial impact? Like, oh, it's not that much, and this is just going to like fade off into the sunset. At least from the administrator's standpoint.
Well, I do think that we could even talk about that a little bit, Rob, and shed some light there, because I think that I think one of our goals and what we should be attempting to do is we should be trying to show everybody. Grand Canyon showed us their cards, right? They don't want men's volleyball anymore. Okay, fine. I don't think that it is fair for us to try and reserve the understandings and the inner workings that we learn about that program and that in that university, so that there's transparency on this decision. And my understanding, talking to some really valuable sources who happen to be involved, is that they're cutting this program who has a $300,000 operating budget. Okay, so I want to just break down some numbers. And those that are listening, you guys can do the math in your head. $300,000 is their operating budget. Okay, you're going to sprinkle in some coaches' salaries in there. right? But this is how much it costs for them to operate. Right now, they're at 4.5 scholarships because that's where every Division I and Division II has been held, right? So let's just assume that they had somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 athletes in their gym. They're only scholarshiping 4.5 of those. How much revenue is being generated from this team? So let's just say 21 guys are paying their full way, and let's just assume that this private school charges around $65,000. I haven't done these numbers, but let's just assume they did roughly $65,000 times 21 guys. How much money's coming into the university versus that $300,000 budget? So when that university tells you that this is about dollars, it's about our ability to support the other 20 sports, it has nothing to do with that. And that's these are the things that we need to understand, which is why you're going to see the posts that are going to conspire over social media about how frustrated we all are when a university wants to go down this path.
I got it for you. $1.3 million of revenue from those tuitions of those 20 students.
Okay, so what are we talking about? What are we talking about? We are in the, now this is we already talked about this. This is a for-profit Christian institution. Okay, great. There's your profit. Men's volleyball makes money. And we're not even talking about the gate, how many tickets they sell, what they do when they actually fundraise and work their way towards generating that operation budget. We haven't even given them the ability to ask, hey, if we're struggling for money, let us try and solve the problems. Do we have the alumni base that can step in and help us? Do we have what it takes to potentially generate our own revenue? We're a really great program. I think a lot of people would want to get involved. A lot of clubs, there's a lot of boys volleyball in Arizona that look up to this university and have a high level team in their backyard and their ability to watch them. This is absolutely bonkers. And again, back to the big picture perspective, it all comes back to what's on the forefront and Grand Canyon trying to get in front of the changes that are coming in the NCAA. And it's just wrong. It's wrong. It gives the wrong message about collegiate athletics and how we know it impacts our current athletes, our future athletes, and the reasons why we do this at the root of it all.
Yeah. Well, I know there's more to come. Some great things have come about. Like it's mentioning a GoFundMe has been started, and the goal, I say this, is only $100,000. We don't know what it's going to take to even get their attention. But Cameron Thorne, a former athlete at Grand Canyon, now UCLA, is one that started that. And you've got, I mean, you've got to see what's happening on social right now. It is blowing up. Joe McCurdy is talking to current athletes and people who are connected to the program very deeply. But I wanted to get into this part, and it's because, and I normally would not get involved in something like this, but if you're going to slander someone's name, you better have the proof. And the thing is, I know one of the people whose names have been slandered, and I think Theo actually knows him a lot better than I do. And to say that former head coach Matt Worley knew about this, and that's why he jumped out, is what I want to address. I'm going to let Theo talk first and then add on, because I think it's more valuable what Theo has to say, because he played, competed against, they've hung out, and I'm sure they've done other things that you probably didn't mention on the podcast. But we'll leave that for another After Dark episode.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great headway. And I'll start by saying this. Matt and I have known each other for a really, really long time. I consider him a dear friend. And his move to the women's side at Kansas has been a great one for him, a great one for his family. It is really funny. I sent him a message shortly after this whole thing went down, and just checking on him because I know how much he cares about that program. And I was really sad to hear that he had been a lot of people, and not just to his face, but obviously on social media, but a lot of people had just been essentially throwing him under the bus, saying that the reason that he left was because he knew that this was coming. If you believe that, then you don't know who Matt is. And my guess is that over the next couple of months, you're going to figure out who he really is and how much he cares about that program and how wrong you were to assume that that's why he ran, because that's couldn't be further from the truth. And I think that Cam Thorne, I saw a little bit of his interview today, but Cam hit it on the head. The GCU has constantly shown their cards in terms of a lack of support, right? And that part Matt did know. He was very familiar with, because his entire time there, he was fighting the fight for his student athletes. He was fighting the fight for his assistant coaches, and he was fighting the fight for himself to get supported and to have the type of funding that would allow him to continue on the path that he had built that program to be. And he did not leave because they were cutting the program. In fact, he had no clue. He left because he was presented with an opportunity that was too good for him to look past for him and his family.
Now, we need to mention is a current trend right now, because former CVW contributor Dave Hunt, I mean, I was bummed to see him go, but when he showed me what he's being paid, I get it. You know?
Yeah. And you can go down the list. I mean, you can literally name dozens and dozens and dozens of men's coaches who have gone down this same path. And at the end of the day, it's about dollars and cents. And I know that from the outside looking in, we love this game and coaches dedicate their entire life to this. But some of us get older and have families too. And money does have something to do with this. Our ability to provide for our families is going to be a factor at some point. And it was for Matt. And to hear the things that people were saying about him, it's just incorrect. It couldn't be further from the truth. And your fight is not with Matt Worley. I promise you, it's not with Matt Worley. It's with Grand Canyon. And that type of attack and slander, it just doesn't do any good for what we all need to be working together on in the future, which is attempting to save Grand Canyon and bring him back.
Yep. You know, Matt Worley is a great man, great father, great husband. As you were saying, the situation that presented itself, it was a dream situation. If you're a father of a young family and you can coach alongside with your good friend and who has a family of the same age kids, when everyone is friends, and they bring on the Dillards, who are also close friends and family. Yes. I mean, you'd be stupid. Cost of living a lot less. Yep. Of course, the compensation significantly more. And I will say significantly more, because what Matt was doing at Grand Canyon, he didn't do it for the money. He did it because he loved men's volleyball. Because, you know, they talk about the disparity in the salaries. I'm sorry, but on the men's side, you're doing it because you love the game. Just look at the graphic. I know Theo was the top 3 on one of the graphics and wasn't.
That graphic couldn't be more incorrect, but it is spot on in the sense that they don't know a lot, but it's not a lot of money.
Well, let's just say that it is, I would say, at least 4 times more on the women's side compensation wise. So it made sense.
You might be lowballing it 4 times.
I know. I'm trying to be conservative, so I'm not like, you know what I mean? Trying to embellish.
You look at it this way, Rob. If you were to take the top 20 coaches on the men's side and compare them to the top 20 coaches on the women's side, I think it could be closer to 7 or 8 times.
All right. Theo said it, not me. So hate mail to Theo. Okay. So, well, I think we've spoken enough about it, and I wanted to definitely draw attention to the GoFundMe by Cam Thorne. It's Save GCU Volleyball on GoFundMe, and there's so many posts on it. Just go to I hate going to my feed, but it's the Rob on the Mic on Instagram. Joe McCurdy or JTMV V-Ball also has a lot of the links, and I'm sure Cam Thorne's Instagram also has his stuff and direct links. And I did see former assistant Matt August also has a petition that he's created, and I think at last I checked, there's over 15,000 signatures. So Coach Matt August is his handle. This isn't about me or Theo or College Volleyball Weekly. This is about men's volleyball, and we're going to do this. We want to get on the radar of people so they know what's going on here, because this is a serious injustice. It's neglect. It's a massive mistake that we feel.
I want to add this too, Rob. the school and the student athletes, they're going to need a lot of support, and if you have the ability to go to the GoFundMe and to give and to support in that way, that would be fantastic. In addition to, get on social media, go to your emails. The more that we can stir up the pot. So Grand Canyon makes this release, they put it on social media, they disabled the comments.
Yep.
They disabled the comments because they know what they're doing, and they know how much this is going to impact a lot of people and upset a lot of people. Our goal and our mission, and this is coming from me, and everybody might not feel this way, but is to make as much noise as humanly possible. Send your condolences, send your and I'm not saying to be mean, right? What I am saying, we don't fight fire with fire, but get out there and have your voice heard that this upsets you, and make sure that Grand Canyon doesn't get to just move on, that they've got to listen to the voices of the people who care about men's volleyball, who care about the way that they handled this situation, so that they have to revisit this and that they've got to reconsider. And I think that the more that we speak and we use our voice and we use our tools, which is right now social media and email and communication, the more that we can make a loud impact that has to be heard, the more power that we have as a group.
Yeah. Well, the other way is contacting your athletic director, but I noticed that they pulled the email address off the site, or it wasn't available to begin with. You get to determine that, but I don't know. It smells like yeah. And then the CEO, the president of the university, but it has a CEO title, Brian Mueller. So let your voices be heard. This is very important for obviously men's volleyball, but more importantly, the lives of those who are affected by this decision. So Theo Edwards of CSUN, head coach, remarkable season, but we'll talk volleyball when we can get the other guys together. I just don't know if we're going to recover everyone from their golfing outings, exit interviews, times in, wherever they go vacationing. And then if Brad has a baby, who knows when we'll see him next. And if you take a modeling contract somewhere in Europe, I mean, we never know these days. So
well, Rob, whenever we get to it, I'll be here. So thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. Have a good day, Theo.
You too.
Thanks for listening to College Volleyball Weekly. Be sure to follow Rob Aspero at the Rob on the Mic on Instagram and at Rob on the Mic on Twitter.